think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Money Level Show. I appreciate you all for tuning in. And today we're going to do an exclusive interview. I like to interview people that are in different aspects, that work with different aspects of money, whether that's taxes, financial planning, investing, and things of that nature, so that you all are able to get something out of this and not just hear me talk and rant all the time. So I just appreciate y'all for listening in. So today we have my friend Mark. And so just to give a little backstory on how me and Mark came to this conversation, it really just highlights how much you have to really listen to people and how much you have to get to know people. And so we were in a group meeting, and Mark had mentioned that he was a CPA. And so we began to engage through email and everything, and just being able to really just connect and being able to see that, okay, this actually applies to what I'm doing. And so whenever you're getting to know people, whenever you talk to people and get to know them, you never know what they may be doing. You never know what their side hustle or their old jobs may have been, and they could be a connection for you. So Mark, I just want to welcome you today and appreciate you for coming today.
Well, thanks very much, Darrell. I appreciate the invitation. And I had no idea that we worked in the same building and we had interests like this that we share. So I'm glad we were both in that training on Friday. And yeah, I'm eating this up. It's great.
Definitely. It's been a passion of mine since the pandemic first started. I've always kind of known about money. You know, I used to follow Dave Ramsey pretty strictly, and then I began to read like Robert Kiyosaki and how to build passive income and things of that nature. So I kind of been going down this rabbit hole for the last few months, and so since the beginning of this year. So
you're a young guy. If you keep doing what you're doing, 20 years from now, you'll be given big sums of money to social causes and other things.
Yeah, so, definitely. I hope so.
Hats off to you for studying this stuff, learning, and maybe it'll make you wealthy someday. So good luck.
Yeah, definitely. So our motto here at the Money Level Show is to think, act, and prosper. So we tap in. So we have to think about these things, then we have to act, and then we prosper in that case. So just give us a little backstory of kind of what led you down the path of being a CPA, accounting, and taxes, and all of that stuff. What kind of led you to in that interest or whatnot?
All right. Well, great question. So my mother pushed me out of the house when I had just turned 18, and she said, "You're going to college." So she sent me over to WSU. And I had no idea what to study. And so I said, okay, how about pre-med? And I didn't do well.
Mm-hmm.
So I I said, okay, well, what profession is there that spans the entire community so that there would be reasonable assurance I could get a job? Yeah. And, keeping track of money is something that every organization, including individual households, have to do.
Yes.
And because the regulatory environment is so complex, that going to college somewhat prepares you to enter that world and handle that complexity. And so I thought, and I like numbers. Numbers are fun. I'm natural with them. And so I began to pursue a business degree, and eventually got that. And then I went on to get an accounting degree, which took another year at WSU. And then I was commissioned as a second lieutenant, and boom, I went off to Georgia.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. Cause you're a lot better than me. Cause I was terrible at math, and but I love money, and math plays a pretty decent money.
There you go. You can learn to love it.
Definitely.
If you love something, it depends on something else. You learn to love both.
so math for me, it really, I really hated it, but money relies on it. Money relies on math. I'm actually doing my real estate license now, and I'm learning how to calculate interest rates and square footage of homes and all of those different things. And so all of that applies to math. And so I really, I hated it at first, but money relies on math. So, and if you don't know how to count it, then you're gonna get screwed over at some point.
Right. Especially when you look at interest and how it compounds from year to year.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think, oh yeah, well, okay, 2%. So you put it in and you pull it out, you get 2%. But if you hold it there, you get 2% in year one, and then you get 2% in year two. But year two includes the 2% you got in year one.
Yeah.
And so, there's a rule called the rule of 76, where you divide, you take the interest rate, and it'll tell you how many years it takes for your money to double. And right now it takes 70 years because the interest rates are so low.
Mm-hmm.
But ages ago, I bought a CD for my mother after I sold her house, and I got 6.5%.
Wow.
So the 65 I put in 10 years later was worth 130.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I actually talked a little bit about that, how, keeping our money in banks, how banks, they pay 0.00005% or whatnot. And it's like, hey, the bank is using your money to loan out to other people. And so
Yep.
if you're not going to get anywhere by leaving it in the bank, and then inflation is going to take down your purchasing power and all of those different things as well. So
no, that's exactly right. Depending on how much money you have in the bank, you might get a dividend of 11 cents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what are you going to do? Pull that out and go buy something?
Yeah. No, nothing costs 11 cents.
It used to be you could buy bubble gum for a nickel, but I don't think you can anymore.
Yeah. I think those days are long gone. So just a little bit about, accounting. Like I kind of started researching a little more about how to read balance sheets and things like that. And I came to start studying a little bit about taxes, and knowing that we have a tax code here in the United States. And I did a video breaking down like kind of the cash flow quadrant of how you pay a lot more taxes as an employee or self-employed. So taxes seem very overwhelming for a lot of people. They seem confusing or even boring for the average person. But how important are they?
Well, if I recall my history correctly, I think the income tax was imposed in 1913, and it may have been to pay off the debt from the Civil War. I can't recall my history, but since then, Americans have been taxed at varying rates. At one point, the highest tax rate on marginal income was 97%. So that if you earned $1, all but 3 cents of it went to Uncle Sam.
Wow.
And if you're out to make money, you want to have efficient processes and procedures. You want to pay your employees a fair wage. And you want to be very competitive. And so one very fruitful avenue to lower costs for businesses is to have highly skilled tax accountants on the payroll who can look at the activities of the business, compare those to the tax code, and then take advantage of what's in the tax code to minimize their tax liability. And what I mean by that is, how big is the check they have to send to the IRS at the end of a year? And the tax code at one point was 7,500 pages long.
Wow.
And that was some years ago. And so it may be 8,500 pages long now. And people like you and me, Darrell, we're never going to make sense of all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Most of us don't have to, though, because in my case, I work for the county, Jefferson County. I go to work, I get a paycheck. That's about it. I have savings accounts, I have some investments and so on. But when it comes time for me to file my tax return, I use the short form. And this year I have to use the standard deduction. And I'm married, so that's about $24,000. If I look at everything I spend that I can deduct, mortgage interest and so on, I don't have 24,000 in deductions. So I'll take the standard, and then I'll owe what I owe. And I'm happy to do that because it pays for school, law enforcement, all kinds of very good social things. But there's so many different categories of taxpayers. You have simple ones like me, and then you have very complex tax returns where somebody making millions has overseas investments. They might be building something, and it's so hard to go through the tax code and determine what people are eligible for to reduce their tax liability. But it's a huge industry in the country. A lot of people are good at it, and as a result, a lot of people who make a lot of money don't pay a lot in taxes.
Yeah.
Which, from a social point of view, is really not a fair thing.
Yeah.
So, and the thing about the tax code, and shut me up, Darrell, anytime you want me to shut up.
Oh, no, it's all good.
The tax code is created by the Congress. They look at amendments to the tax code every single year, but that whole process is influenced in my view, in an unethical way, because you have all these lobbyists in Washington who want certain things put into the tax code so their situation gets favorable treatment and they pay less in taxes.
Yeah.
So you end up with a guy who makes 500 million and he owes nothing in taxes.
Yeah.
But yet here, I don't know what you paid, Darrell, last year, but you must have paid 8 or 9 or 10,000 in taxes.
Yeah, it was up there. I do have a self-employed business, so I was able to write off quite a few things. And
what'd you just say?
I have a self-employed business.
No, the write-off part. Talk to me about that.
I was able to write off a few things
because the tax code wants you to be in business, right?
Yep.
And they want you to be able to write those things off so that you can be successful.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Now, that's not a lobbyist provision. A lobbyist provision would be for a multinational oil company to be able to deduct this or that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So that the deficit goes up, or they offshore, they go to Ireland or some other place. So anyway, whenever you have complex legislation, you have opportunity for lobbying and for loopholes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's always some loopholes. I've noticed that with a lot of these laws being passed, like when Teddy Roosevelt passed the gold confiscation law, and there was a loophole with that if you own gold that was pre-1933, you didn't have to adhere to the law. And so it was.
How do you prove that?
Yeah. Well, you have to prove it on the coin. It'll show like the date on the coin.
So, yeah, but what if you have a gold bar that doesn't have a date on it?
That's true. That is true. So a lot of people are able to get around that through those loopholes. And so I've noticed, like with the tax code, the government provides incentives for people who farm, oil, energy, provide housing, or own a business, provide jobs. But it sounds like from what you're saying that there are some people that have abused that, and there's people that actually use that to their advantage, to get out of debt or to build wealth and things like that.
Right. Well, whenever the the tax code is modified to benefit a group, you have to kind of back up and say, okay, who's the group? What do they do? What's their interest? And what impact did the change in the tax code have on them? You know, you don't typically come to Congress and say, hey, would you revoke this so that I have to pay more? Or would you change the law so I can't do this or that, so I have to pay more? No, it's the other way.
Yeah,
they come in and they say, can you change this so that I'm exempt, so I don't have to pay that?
Yeah.
So and what happens when one group gets a benefit, that burden shifts to the entire population or to another group because they raise taxes someplace else, because that other group didn't have a powerful lobbying influence. Nobody came to talk to me about that. So I increased their taxes and they didn't, I didn't hear from them because these people over here wanted theirs lowered. So,
it's almost like the death of the middle class.
Right. I think the middle class has recovered a little bit, but if you lump the middle with the lower end, I don't know how many people, but that's the bulk of the country.
Yeah. Definitely.
And we need that group to be successful. We want them to have jobs that provide for families so they can buy food and have transportation and all of that.
And they produce a lot of the goods that we have in our country. We need to produce more goods, and so those people, definitely work to produce the goods for the country.
No, you're right. I love the people that, the guy at Safeway here in town in Port Townsend, who makes the beautiful displays. My wife and I knew him in Vancouver before we moved here, because he was at a Safeway that we shopped at down there, and then we moved here, and then he moved here.
Wow.
But he doesn't make a whole lot of money. I don't know what he makes as the produce guy, but he's a wonderful man, and he could afford to move here because the quality of life here is excellent and all of that.
So what are some of the tax benefits that are given more to corporations and investors, such as real estate investors? I know Warren Buffett, he's been investing in stocks for a while and he's getting some tax breaks somewhere, but he does give a lot too. But what are some of the tax benefits of people owning businesses or becoming professional investors? Because a lot of people, like we usually get a job and we're fine or we're content, but really, you're not going to make a lot of money just being an employee. And so
right.
What are some of the tax benefits that these corporations and investors get?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question, Darrell. From a public policy point of view, taxation is an important tool in achieving goals that the legislature, the Congress might have. For example, which is the case now, if the standard deduction for a married couple is $24,000 and the deduction for a single person is $12,000, well, then if you're married and you file a joint return, you have a bigger deduction.
Yeah.
So that's the way the state encourages people to be married, because that's how you build wealth if you're married.
Yeah.
Two people working, one rent payment. So anyway, the tax code is a way to build societies, and to encourage the behaviors that you want to see. And so, for example, Darrell, you mentioned business. So if I'm a medium-sized business and I make carbon fiber parts for cars,
Mm-hmm.
and I can double my revenues and double my production if I buy robotic machines to make the carbon fiber, and then I don't need as many people. I can let people go, which is a problem right there, because now we have people that had a job that don't now have a job.
Mm-hmm.
But according to the tax code, the investment I made in that equipment, I can depreciate rapidly, which reduces my taxable income, which reduces my tax liability.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example of a deduction that you're allowed to take because of the socially desirable goal of building businesses so that they hire people.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for answering that because I know for me, like, me and my wife, we own a photography and video business. And so, a lot of times, I'm able to write off a few things. Like, I did so technically a production company, but like I went out and bought all my podcast gear and I was like, I'm like, we do production work. I'm writing this off. And so, it definitely comes with some benefits. My cousin, he has a kind of like a travel agency kind of company, and so he does a lot of write-offs as well.
Right.
So it's definitely beneficial for even the average American to own some sort of business, that they can have some write-offs, from things that they may use, throughout their life as well.
Right. But so very good point, Darrell. And for the honest people in our community, like you and others, that's great. However, there's a segment of our society that will take that and will stretch it to such a degree that if you looked at it, you'd say, not so sure I'd deduct that, if I get audited.
That kind of brings us to like, Donald Trump, I know his taxes, he paid, what is it, $750. And I know he has a lot of real estate and stuff, but I guess some of the deductions was like him getting his hair done or something like that.
Well, okay. I'm familiar with what you just said. So if you are a big honking movie star and you have a program that's super popular, like what was it called? The Apprentice?
Yeah.
And you're the main attraction and you want your hair to be a certain way for that show, why wouldn't that be a business expense?
Yeah. I agree. And for me, like it was, when I first saw that, I was like, wow, he wrote off his hair, but he is in entertainment as well, and so that is definitely something that could be a write-off in those situations.
Now there are, I'm sure there's charlatans out there that fabricate and inflate and do other things, people that they're all over, they exploit. Now that brings up a good point about Trump. So the reason that he on his tax return only owed $750 is because his tax accountants made payments in March, June, September, and December.
Mm-hmm.
The estimated tax payments that you have to calculate.
Yeah.
And mail in.
Yeah.
So his accountants figured he would owe a dollar amount, and they missed it by $750.
Oh, okay, I see.
So he owed the difference.
Yeah, yeah. Wow,
right?
you don't get told that piece of the story, you know.
No. Everyone wanted to say he ripped off Uncle Sam. He only paid $750, and that's deceptive.
Yeah, the IRS don't play, you know, like they would be on them, you know.
Uh huh.
They don't play.
Right, and I might add that his tax returns were released in violation of federal law.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Nobody's prosecuting the New York Times or whoever let him out, but they could be prosecuted for that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you know, he owns a lot of real estate, and I talked a little bit about in my video I did on the cash flow quadrant that real estate, you can depreciate your properties, and a lot of times, you know, you're not making as much money as the depreciation for the year. So if you're
Right.
renting out a property for 1,000 a month and you're depreciating at 15,000 a month, you're in the hole, you know. So you know, plus all your other expenses that you can write off as well. And so Trump owns a lot of real estate, and some of his businesses, I don't believe was doing too well as well. So, you know, you have that component as well. So people don't really think about that.
Right. Well, if you're the honcho of a big corporation and you have 100 different business entities, um, you know, have you taken statistics, Darrell, as part of your
No,
education in finance and all?
no, that was one of them topics I ran away from.
Okay. All right. Well, statistics, it at some point you might just start looking into it, but so it's very interesting what statistics laws say about things. For example, if you have 100 different measurements and you plotted them, you would get a normal distribution curve, which means that most of your entries would be in the middle, and then you'd have some high ones and some low ones.
Mm-hmm.
So the vast majority of the population is going to be in the middle of that curve, paying 20%, 25% in taxes. Just for grins, when I was a county manager down in Clark County, my federal income tax burden was $47,000.
Wow.
That's what I paid. And that doesn't include property taxes or sales taxes or any, motor vehicle fuel or any of that.
I think that's how that number gets up there, to like as far as the average, because we do have sales tax and all those other taxes, property
Right.
taxes, and
Right. If you went through, do you have a cell phone, Darrell?
yeah.
Have you ever gone through it to look at all the fees at the bottom? How
No, I
many?
have
How
not.
many? How many of those are taxes?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure they have a lot of I've seen the bill a few times, but I haven't looked at it in a while. I know they're taxing the hell out of me too. You know?
Well, yeah, but one of those tax revenues goes to our local 911,
Mm-hmm.
or Jeffcom
Yeah,
to
yeah,
to help protect you and me and everybody else, and to dispatch fire trucks and police and all that.
yeah, definitely.
So that's a tax I'm happy to pay. But I think our county commissioners in Jefferson County might be looking at a slight increase in the sales tax for affordable housing.
Yeah.
A point. So we'd go from 9.0 sales tax to 9.1. Now that matters to some people, or it did, because in the state of Washington, you're allowed to deduct sales taxes paid or income taxes paid, which we don't pay,
Mm-hmm.
as a deduction, which in my case has helped me reduce my tax burden.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still the case. I'm not up on the latest state law regarding taxes and federal, for that matter.
I know California, they're running people out of there.
Taxation? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realize how bad it was out there.
Yeah. If you look, there are actually charts that show which states are gaining and which are losing. New York is suffering a tremendous loss.
Those are people moving out, or are you saying like state deficits?
No, moving out.
Yeah, so people moving out, yeah.
Which will increase the deficit at the state level. And I know New York City has a big deficit, and Cuomo says he's not bailing out de Blasio, and Trump said, I'm not bailing out New York. So I don't know what's going to happen with all that, but it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, California's been a lot of, I've seen a lot of, rich people moving out of there. I think they try to implement some type of wealth tax, and then they're trying to increase the state taxes. You know, I have a friend that moved down there, and he's doing, he's doing youth ministry. So he's technically working for a nonprofit. And, I told him, I was like, man, it's probably hard to, keep your head above water down there because those taxes are really high. And he agreed. He said, he was having a really hard time, just trying to make it out there.
Yeah, right. Well, you think the cost of living here is high. Try to buy a place in San Francisco.
Yeah, definitely.
1,000 square foot apartment for $1 million and how much?
Yeah.
Million.
It's wild. So some people have trouble with CPAs. So some people have CPAs that they feel don't try their best, or don't really do their research and how to get them tax breaks. I know one of the guys I watch named Mark Moss. He when he first started his businesses, he was paying a lot of taxes, and then he started reading these books about the tax code and tax breaks and all this stuff. And he marked up this whole book, and just with notes, and then he handed it to the CPA, and the CPA, still didn't want to do, what he asked. So he had to fire him or whatnot. And so what's your thoughts on that? Because it's almost like any type of field, you're going to have, your bad apples or your people that aren't as thoughtful or are lazy, and
right.
don't want to seek that out. So what's your thoughts on CPAs that some CPAs are good and some CPAs aren't going to really get you the best for your buck?
Right. So there's a body at the state level called the Washington State Board of Accountancy. And in order to hold yourself out as a CPA, you have to meet educational requirements, you have to pass an exam, and you have to have experience.
Mm-hmm.
Only when you meet those requirements are you able to use the title CPA.
Yeah. And
when you earn that title, you have to keep up your professional education, and that's 120 hours every 3 years. Does that keep you completely sharp? No, it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, I'm in government. I'm not going to hang out a shingle. I don't need to know the tax code in depth. There are other things I don't need to know because I'm in government, but I do need to know the government piece. So the fact that I'm a CPA doesn't make me an expert everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It means I have an aptitude for the subject matter, that I'm reasonably informed on the latest rules and regulations. But as in every profession, you have people that you might call charlatans who are simply out to make as much money as they can and to heck with the client, and just try to be clever about it so you don't get caught. Yeah, and then you have the very large middle folks that are pretty good, that want to do a good job and that try reasonably hard to do a good job. And then on the far right, you've got the exceptional firms that have the highest quality people who are ambitious and who want to do a really good job and who will research every little thing. And so that's a spectrum of capability, talent, effort, and so on. But then So that's the service provider side. On the customer side, you have a similar spectrum of people who don't make a lot of money, can't afford to pay a CPA a lot, but have simple returns that they could do themselves, or they could buy TurboTax to do for like $29. And then you have more complex cases that require the middle of the profession. And then you have the high powered people on the, that make tons of money, who need to hire the high powered folks.
Yeah, definitely.
So, a guy like you and me, we're not going to get the high powered people.
Yeah.
But if you think that your accountant isn't doing the job, take all your papers to another one and say, tell me what my refund should have been. And then you can compare the work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. This year I've been kind of thinking about it for next year. Like, should I hire an accountant? Because I did a lot of stock trades this year, and it's a lot. It's a lot to keep up with. I believe TurboTax the first year, they automatically populated every single transaction I made through my brokerage account, and
boy.
And then the next year I had to fill all of those in, and then so this year, we saw the market do a huge drop, and so I jumped in, really hard. I've been trading, researching companies, stuff like that, and I'm like, I got a lot of transactions this year, so I may have to the account.
Yeah. Well, for each one, you got a buy and a sell date, a buy date, sell date. How long was it? Was it short term, long term, right? And then what'd you pay and what'd you make? What's the difference? Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So with taxes, I kind of been researching some of this. So obviously, like, our government is supposed to be funded through taxation, and right now we're running huge deficits. I believe over 60 cents per dollar is being borrowed from the Federal Reserve that we have to pay back on interest. And so a little over 30 cents is being collected through taxation. So for me, like, I kind of identify more with free market capitalists. I do have some ideals, socialist ideas. I can agree with some of that, but more on the free market side, I've been kind of researching, like, if taxes are unconstitutional and all those different things. And obviously getting into that battle of, with the government, like, obviously the IRS is going to win. I mean, you can go out and say, oh, this is unconstitutional, but you're still going to have to pay taxes at the end of the day, or you're going to get a tax evasion charge or whatnot. What's your thoughts on taxes? Because I know they implemented them around wartime to pay for the war. And I think there was a lot of issues around the Supreme, the justices, the Supreme Court, in approving taxes because they felt that they were unconstitutional. And I want to think this was Teddy Roosevelt around the World War II time. But what's your thoughts on taxes being constitutional or not?
Well, I'm not a constitutional scholar. However, when we were a young nation, I can't recite precisely where the government got its revenues, but I do know that some of the revenues that the federal government used to operate came from tariffs on goods coming in from outside the country. And there may have been other sources as well.
A lot of it was we had to pay a lot of tax to England, and that's when the Boston Tea Party and all of
right.
that. So we were paying a lot of taxes over to them, but we weren't getting any representation. So we had that whole taxation without representation thing.
Exactly, and the Stamp Act and all of that. So very hard for a federal government to discharge its responsibilities to a nation, especially as the nation began to grow. In order to fulfill your duties to defend the country, you need a a War Department or a Department of Defense. Many of the government departments that we have now, some might argue are superfluous. Like, why do we need a Department of Energy? Why do we need a Department of Education? We have local school boards to take care of education. We have businesses that will take care of energy, and that's not a political comment. It's just to help answer the question that you have about taxation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as the government grows, how do you finance all of its activities? You can't use tariffs because we don't make enough in tariffs to afford the government that we have. So you do need a source of revenue, and that most likely source is to tax the people that purportedly benefit from the services that you're providing using the money they're paying you in taxes.
Yeah.
And so we could have a big debate about that, whether or not what I pay in taxes is coming back to me in equal measure. It may be that somebody somewhere else is getting, so I pay $47,000 in taxes and I get back $30,000 in benefit, right? So I'm down $17,000. But then you go somewhere else and you find a person who isn't making a lot of money, doesn't pay a lot of taxes, but then is a heavy draw on social services, hospital emergency rooms, and that sort of thing. So that person's getting 50 grand in benefit, but only paying 12 in taxes, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, if we were all to disagree with that and stop doing that, we'd have one nasty society.
Yeah, definitely.
We're not going to do it. It wouldn't make sense to do it. So how do you use taxes to try to level the playing field? I mean, because taxation is a tool to achieve goals, some of which could be social welfare goals or social benefit goals, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely interesting because, I kind of researched a little bit about Reagan and his it's kind of called the Reaganomics.
Trickle down.
Yeah, and he kind of came in with the more small government approach, in which that was kind of like the when the Constitution was being built, like a lot of it was formed around keeping government small. And right now, government is huge.
It's massive.
Yeah, so we're paying a lot of salaries, and I'm not sure we need all of those positions.
And most of them make a whole lot more money than we do, Darrell.
Yeah, definitely. The same thing with the stimulus package. Like I was kind of thinking about this whole mess with, Nancy Pelosi and then Stephen Mnuchin and I kind of just research, like I kind of just read how people respond to it, and a lot of people were just like, obviously, Nancy Pelosi, didn't want to proceed with the stimulus package unless the Republicans wanted to spend more money. But she's getting paid a big salary, and a lot of people are like, why didn't you compromise? A lot of people really needing that help. We're like, why wouldn't you compromise? And
right. Yep.
We're paying her salary, so it's like,
well, and then she got mad at a reporter that asked her that question. She snapped at him.
Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty. That was that didn't really seem like 80-year-old behavior.
No. Could I have some tea, please?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks, Mark. I appreciate you joining the show today. I appreciate you bringing that perspective. We're trying to do a lot of this with bringing different professionals on and people that have experience in certain areas, just so that people are educated on finance and all of its aspects. And so I definitely appreciate you for joining the Money Level Show today.
Okay, my pleasure, Darrell. I'd be happy to come back whenever you have a slot that you can't fill with somebody else.
All right, thank you. All right, you have a good day. I'll see you.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.